What's up, everyone? Matt here, and we're doing a bonus episode for the penultimate episode of season 2 of House of the Dragon, titled The Red Sowing. I was going to tie this into Wednesday's episode, but I've got a few supersized things I want to talk about then. It's going to be a little bit of story time. I'm going to do a preview of things coming to streaming in August and on to theaters, and then if you notice, I'm a little more congested. My voice is a little off. That's because I had a stupid amount of smoke inhalation over the weekend because I spent it fighting a grass fire, which I had not planned on doing. So there will be some story time on Wednesday's normal episode. So make sure to tune into that. Also, I just got done recording a 40-minute recap of this episode, and then when I was about 2 minutes from the end, I came to see that my mic was muted. So this is round 2. It's going to be a little bit more concise and to the point, because we're just going to hit the high notes of this episode. There will be spoilers, so be aware of that. So if you haven't watched tonight's episode or this week's episode, whenever you're listening to it, episode 207, then stop now and come back and listen or watch after you've seen it. So I have to say, this episode, this season, I feel like it's been fantastic. We've been hit with a number of epic moments. I know I've seen people on social media who were readers of the book and just of the show in general who haven't really been feeling it and that have just been getting sick of the Daemon visions in Harrenhal, which I get. It's been a lot. I've been really enjoying this season. Now, like I mentioned, I didn't get a rewatch done of season 1, so I can't really accurately compare it to how I feel about it compared to season 1, but I've loved pretty much every episode we've got, even the slower ones. Last week's episode got review bombed like crazy because of the Rhaenyra Mysterious stuff, which I get. Maybe it wasn't for you. I get it didn't make the most sense, and especially with this episode, we don't build off that at all. But yes, it wasn't necessary, but it was still, I felt like a fantastic episode, and I really enjoyed what it was setting up. We got some of that payoff in this episode, and so let's get into it. This episode starts with the face down of Rhaenyra and Adam on the beach, with Rhaenyra with Syrax behind her, Adam with sea smoke behind him, and this scene we'd seen in teasers, trailers for this episode, for the season as a whole, and it was played like it was going to be this big moment, which it kind of was, but it was a little bit anticlimactic for me. Ryan Condal at the end of the episode, the showrunner, mentioned how he viewed this as kind of like a Wild West showdown, right? You've got your Colts, you got your pistols ready behind you, and that's the dragons who are ready at a moment when you're facing off. But essentially in this moment, Adam almost instantly bends the knee and says he just wants to be a dragon rider and he wants to serve his queen, which is kind of a sigh of relief for Rhaenyra when she realizes this. It's someone who's not trying to just start gunning for things and not a third faction she's got to factor in here. And she asks him of his lineage, and he says his mother was, I believe, a shipwright. Sorry, I only got one watch in, was a shipwright, and his father was, and he kind of hesitates, but then he says no one of note. And so I took this as, even though he's been longing, and we got the conversation they had with Alan, his brother, last week's episode, where he's just kind of longing for Corlys to acknowledge them and to make something of himself. But he doesn't want to force parentage upon Corlys. He doesn't want to tarnish his reputation at all, even though bastards they're just a dime a dozen. Everyone had him then. But he just is feeling like it's not his place to just out Corlys there, and he doesn't know how that could be taken. And he gets a little bit payoff of that a little bit later in the episode. No, I'm going to be jumping around. I'm not going to follow a timeline recap of this. I'm going to jump around from the different storylines and where they were at and where we got through it. And so Adam gets a little bit of a payoff with that later on in the episode when he's at Dragonstone, because Rhaenyra has ordered that he be trained as a dragon rider, and he's at Dragonstone, and Corlys comes and visits him, and Adam's just like instantly like to business. He's like, I'm a shipwright. I'd like to request a leave of service. There are all these other shipwrights that can take my place, that would do the job. And Corlys kind of stops him, says like, your request is granted, and then tells him, well done, just kind of with pride. And you can see it kind of that acknowledgement and that kind of recognition and congratulations and pride that Corliss showed there just was validation for Adam, and it was a really neat moment to see. But between that is we see Rhaenyra's council meeting, and I think it was Lord Bartimos is just going off about how they have this lowborn, this thief is seizing dragons, and we can't have that. They really shouldn't. He knows that he's in Corliss's service, but they can't just be seizing dragons up in here. And what are we doing? And thinks he should be taken away and just done away with him. And Jace is obviously pissed too in this moment, which we got some of the preview and we get a little bit of later on in the episode. But the Maester says, like, no, Rhaenyra wants him trained as a dragon rider. He'll be staying here, and that's what we're going to do. And Lord Bartimos is kind of wanting Corliss to stop it. And Corliss is like, we're going to wait and see what Rhaenyra wants. And she's not showing up to the council either. And so I thought this was just kind of shows the classism a little bit that's going on in the world of Westeros, right? They view themselves as a higher level, and we get that followed up here in the follow-up conversation with Rhaenyra and Mysaria, where Rhaenyra's like, I need to go through these, I need to dig more to try to find where Targaryen blood is. Mysaria's like, you need to be looking like underneath sheets, underneath wood piles, just basically calling out the bastards, saying like they're going to have Targaryen blood. Just because they were lowborn doesn't mean that they're not worthy. A lot of times those lowborns are going to have more respect. They're the people you're trying to serve and you're trying to govern, you're trying to rule over. And so that's your best option. Why not look there? And Rhaenyra tells her, she's like, okay. She's like, well, the Lord's talked behind my back of my sons for 20 years. So let us raise an army of bastards. And that's something that we get a little, then later in the episode, we get Jace kind of confronting her and where he's really pissed off. And what we got in the preview for this too, where he's like, lowborns, we're supposed to be Targaryens. We're supposed to be above them. It's supposed to be especially with spawn we have with dragons. And if anyone can lay claim to a dragon, like what good are they? He refers to lowborns, these people, as mongrels, and he's just saying, what if one of the new dragon riders then seeks to lay claim to the throne? Like, then what are you going to do? And Rhaenyra's just reassuring him that he's his heir, he's her heir, and that's what his place is going to be. Like, they're fighting for the throne. They're going to help them take it, and then Jace will be the heir. And Jace asks, he's like, did you think that maybe I'd be dark-haired when you shared your bed with Harwin Strong? Like, I'm not an idiot. I know who my real father is. I know what this is. And he's saying, like, others can see this too. And my legitimacy, like, as your heir, has kind of been secured because I had a dragon. I laid claim to a dragon. And so that kind of showed, like, I should be your heir. I am your son. But now you're taking that away from me. You're now there's other bastards that you're acknowledging now and are going to lay claim to dragons. And so that just kind of takes away my legitimacy and just kind of like begging her, like, do you not see that you're stripping that from me and can you just not pursue this? But Rhaenyra is telling him, like, these riders can end a needless war and I can't, like, this is what the gods have laid before me. I have to take it. I have to go for it. And I think we're kind of seeing this season as a whole, a little bit of a wedge being driven between Rhaenyra and Jace. And I don't know what happens in the books, but we had it earlier on when Rhaenyra just refuses to let Jace ride out to fight because she wants to protect him because he's her heir. But then we had the moments where she tells him about the Song of Ice and Fire, and it feels like they bonded a little more when he had her go out to the twins, to the bridges to try to secure that she's showing some more faith in him diplomatically. But still, this episode, I feel like this was one nail in the coffin for Jace, and it's a little bit of a turning point because he now feels like she doesn't value or respect his concerns. She's more concerned with taking the throne, which he should be all for because he's not going to be heir of anything if they don't take the throne or they don't secure that. And it was originally his idea to look at other people with different, not direct Targaryens, but people who have Targaryen blood to be dragon riders. But the layers that got added into it because of him knowing that he's a bastard too, that was something that my idiot brain didn't see coming, and I really thought was great to be worked into this episode, and I thought it really worked for Jace's character development and where he's at, and I really liked how they built that this season. I'm gonna go to Daemon's arc now. Daemon is back in Harrenhal, and he is Oscar Tully. He has summoned Oscar Tully and the River Lords to him to kind of get them to re-swear their fealty and everything like that. Oscar Tully, I kind of shit on him a little bit earlier in the season because he just seemed spineless and didn't know what he was doing, and like he was going to be so easily manipulated by Daemon, and just seemed aghast that Daemon would insinuate that he just kill his grandsire so that he can have the throne. But Oscar Tully in this is one of my favorite new characters of the season because he had, I can't say that about the child. He has, I can't think of the word to say besides he has some cojones. Cojones, that just sounded weird when I said it. But he just has some courage, and he was not afraid of Daemon and stood up to him, and it was some of the best scenes in my opinion. It was one of my favorite scenes of this season so far. Was Oscar Tully kind of standing up to both his the River Lords and Daemon and kind of putting him in their place. Like he's saying, we're pledging. We would pledge, my grandsire pledged to Viserys when he named Rhaenyra. So we're going to honor our pledge, even though we don't like this guy and how he's doing it with Daemon. But he tells Daemon, he's like, the River Lords, they hate you. I can't guarantee that they're going to raise their banners because they might not respect me because I'm young, and they hate you. And then Daemon goes out there in front of the River Lords, and he's kind of doing all the talking, saying, well, he pledged for me. And then the River Lords start questioning it and questioning Oscar Tully, and he just stands his ground, kind of puts both the Lords in their place and Daemon in his place a little bit because he knows Daemon needs him. And then Willem Blackwood's over there just saying like, hey, I did all these war crimes, but it's all good. These traitors, they bend the knee to the usurper, and I brought them to you. And Oscar Tully, he gives him a moment, he's like, I appreciate you wanting to be my vassal, but these crimes you did, you can say that's because he told you to, but you really wanted to do them when you were doing them. Like, this was something you wanted to do, you sick fuck, a little bit. And he's saying that I have to serve justice. And Willem Blackwood's telling Daemon to, like, stop them. I did this for you. Like, what are you doing? Tell him to stop. Tell him to unhand me. And Oscar Tully just kind of lays on the table and puts him in his place. He's like, you said that you regretted what happened. You got a little carried away. This is your chance to prove it now. Denounce what you did and serve justice upon Willem Blackwood. And it's something that kind of undermines Daemon a little bit too, because Daemon had been telling Willem Blackwood all that he would have for him in his kingdom and when he was ruling, and just how better off Willem Blackwood was going to be. And then Daemon's getting put in his place by a kid, someone who may not even be in their teens. I don't remember if we said how old Oscar Tully was, but it was great. But Daemon ends up beheading the Willem Blackwood, and then has another vision of Viserys, and this time it's decrepit, the end of life Viserys with his face all just decayed and disfigured. And at the end of the episode, Ryan Condal had said that Paddy Considine had said he'd come back as Viserys as that, but he wanted to use that kind of decayed, decrepit makeup in it. And he has this conversation Viserys has with Daemon, just saying, he's holding the crown in his hand, and he's saying, I never wanted this, and I was right for that, because this crown has caused so much pain, and it just crushes whoever wears it. They like turns to Daemon, and Daemon just sees his face and all its nasty glory. And he's like, do you still want this? You kind of get that moment and that look in Damon's face that we had at the end when Oscar Tully was putting him in his place. Just a look like he's lost control. He's feeling kind of powerless in this, and not just feeling a little bit shaken. And that's kind of the same look that we get when Viserys is asking him if he still wants this when he's in that shape. And I thought that was really good. I think everyone's been kind of tired of the Daemon Harrenhal visions, and I'm right there with you. But I do think we are getting, and I don't know what it's like in the book, but in the show, Daemon, we are just seeing some great character development and growth from him, in my opinion. We have a completely different Daemon, for better or worse, than we did in season 1. In King's Landing, that arc of the episode, we have a couple different things going on, key points. We have Aemond sending Aegon's appointed Kingsguard that kind of bungled the end of last episode when Alicent and Helena are leaving the Sept, and basically the riot breaks out because the Kingsguard chops off one of their hands and they're just inexperienced. They were Aegon's lickspittles that he had appointed. Aemond sending them to the wall. He's saying, nope, that for causing a riot, off to the wall. I'm not killing them, but they can head out there. Larys and Lord Jasper is telling Larys that he's heard rumors that Sea Smoke has a rider, and his squire heard it from a stable hand, who heard it from a fisherman, who heard it from someone else. And Larys is just like, well, there's no one else. They're going through all these names. They're like, well, Rhaena attempted it once, but it almost killed her. And then they can't think of anyone else. So they're like, well, maybe just let this rumor die. And speaking of Rhaena, we get a throwaway scene of Rhaena this episode where she's leaving the Eyrie, and well, not a throwaway scene, but something that it was the only scene of Rhaena this episode, and it's going to feed into things either next week or next season. But Rhaena goes off into the fields as they're leaving the Eyrie, kind of looking for that dragon, the wild dragon that was mentioned last week, and she comes across another just spot of torched earth and torched skeleton remains of sheep, and then she keeps going off. So we get that. We get scenes of Alicent had left. She had been talking with the Grand Maester, kind of commiserating about just wanting to serve the people. She had with Viserys. She had been now trying to do what she could, but it's not appreciated. She's hated for it, and she just wants to kind of go off and clear her head. She has just Sir Rickard, her Kingsguard, go off with her. She said she doesn't want her handmaids, anything like that. And they have a conversation in the woods where he asks when she thinks she's ready to head back to King's Landing. And she says, she hasn't decided if she will or not yet. And then we get a scene a little bit later on of her just at a calm lake, which we don't really get any scenes of calm in this series. Even the slower episodes, there's a lot going on in the background and a lot set up. And she's just floating there, peaceful in the water, and then opens her eyes. And this is something, because I'm not a film critic, that I obviously didn't pick up on as much. I wasn't analyzing it. I watched things for enjoyment and to feel something. But they said when Alicent, and Ryan Condal and Olivia Cook said when Alicent opens her eyes, it's because she's had this realization of what her purpose will be and what she has to do next. And what that is, we will see in the next episode. I didn't get that. It seemed like just showing Alicent enjoying a moment of peace with the chaos and the loss and the destruction that she's had to deal with in her life recently. And just having that moment of peace, I thought was nice for her character. Something we don't get in the show. We have the other big moment this episode is Mysaria and Rhaenyra working together, get in contact with Mysaria, have Alan of Hull, Adam's brother, Corlys has him help go to King's Landing and relay a message to basically gather all these Targaryen bastards. And Mysaria's hand person, we get kind of like an Avengers Assemble moment of their going and gathering these their bastards, and their word is spreading. And when Ulf's friends comes to the tavern to Ulf and says, hey, this is your chance. They're gathering smallborn people to go to Dragonstone. They're looking for Targaryen bastards to try to claim a dragon. This is your moment to shine. And Ulf is like making excuses like, no, my leg's no good. I'm invalid. I can't go. And they're like, come on, you need to go. And he's like, well, I don't know how much truth was actually to that story. And then they basically like guilt him or shame him and bully him. They're like, you mean to tell us you've been just talking so much shit here and telling everyone, oh, you're of Targaryen descent, oh, you're blah, 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 Daemon's your brother, all this stuff, and now you won't even go? If people find that out, they're not going to like you. So Ulf accepts that he'll go. The other main bastard that we focus on is Hugh, who we've seen, and he was one of the ones that took some of the food and took someone out last episode to bring it home. And he's telling his wife he has to go. And he talks about how he couldn't protect their daughter. And so we get the sad realization that his daughter had died because they weren't able to get food and they weren't able to protect her. And he said he has to do this. Like, he never knew his father, but he knew his mother. And she had served in a pleasure house, and she was kind of highly valued because of her silver hair. And he mentions that his mother told him that he was the same as her brother's boys, Viserys and Daemon. So we know he's pretty high up there on the bastard chain. And he says he has to do this for her. He has to go to Dragonstone, and he has to try. Like, he has to do it. He has to try to make something of himself. And then we get when all the bastards just are funneling into Dragonstone. They're all gathered in a room, and Rhaenyra goes down, and all the dragon keepers are there, and they start speaking to her in High Valyrian about how this is an abomination and it's blasphemy, and she already had to tried to have some of the Andals go before the dragons, and they saw how that happened with Sir Darkland, and they weren't going to be any part of this. Dragons are of old Valyria. They're not men's playthings. Like, what you're doing is wrong. We don't agree with it. We're leaving. Which is kind of a big deal because they were ones who played a major part in kind of calming Sea Smoke when they tried to get Sir Darkland to ride him. And they're the ones that take care of the dragons in there. But one of their own died with the Sir Darkland debacle. So I can't blame them for just seeing this as Rhaenyra just trying to throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. And so then Rhaenyra gives a big, pretty epic speech to all the bastards gathered there. She's like, I used to think that I knew what it was to train a dragon. I now realize that's just ash in the wind. Like, it could be your blood. It could be something else. She's like, you all left a life to come here. It's a life you may not return to, one way or the other. You may die. You will be changed. Whether when you're in front of a dragon, it will change you. Whether you ride it or not, being in front of a dragon will change you. And she's talking about how this is their purpose they all came out of hardships. This is your purpose to help end these hardships, to bring peace to the realm, to have order restored, end the suffering, and to try to do it without bloodshed. Because if they get Vermithor and Silverwing riders, then the high towers and they will tremble and they will be able to show their might. And so that's the purpose they're serving. And she's like, well, come on, first up's Vermithor. He's the largest next to Vhagar. He's maybe the fiercest. We call him the Bronze Fury, and let's go to him now. And then Rhaenyra steps up and summons Vermithor and High Valyrian. And then we get this epic scene of like what you get in a movie when the monster's showing up. You just get these loud footsteps, and then Vermithor appears behind her, and she calms him, tells him calm, and calls for him to serve. And then she's like, okay, who wants to step up to the plate first? Who wants to try? And we get someone who looks a little bit disfigured that starts making their way towards the front to try. And Rhaenyra and everyone walks off. She says, okay. She leaves and she says, I have nothing more to tell you. Walks off, goes to almost like a viewing platform above. And then Vermithor just fucking torches this guy, which we all saw this coming. And he starts taking out the small folk, these lowborn bastards on the platform, just laying fire down, just eating them, knocking them off. Ulf gets knocked off the platform. Hugh runs away. And then we get Ulf scurries off to the side of the dragon pit. And then Hugh is just kind of right in the midst of it, just watching Vermithor take people out. He's hiding behind rocks, stones. And then we see this woman that was there. Vermithor is facing her head on and about to take her out. And Hugh runs out and he's like, I'm here. Here I am. Here I am, to give Vermithor's attention. Vermithor turns to him. Hugh's like, I'm ready. I'm ready. Take me. Come on. And Vermithor just calms down and lowers his head. It lets Hugh put his hand on his snout. And you see Rhaenyra kind of get a smile across her face, like she's done it. She now has the second largest dragon. She now has a rider for it. And she's feeling a little good about herself. And I thought we were going to cut there. But we get Ulf wandering through the caves. And he's got his torch, and he accidentally steps on what is kind of a nest with a bunch of dragon eggs in it that we see. And then Silverwing is there, and Silverwing kind of knocks him over with his snout. And Ulf is laying there just waiting for death to take him. You can tell. But then Silverwing kind of backs off and bows his head, and Ulf just leans up and has a big old smile on his face. Which is really convenient that it just worked out so smoothly for those people. And I don't know how that is in the books. Maybe it's like that, but I feel like there's maybe a little more to it, but what do I know? And then we get a scene, we get Aemond and the small council there, which is looking smaller every day. It's like Larys, Lord Rupert, Aemond. I think the Grand Maester was there, but Alicent's away, Kristen Cole's away, and the Lannister guy wasn't there. I don't remember seeing him. But Lord Jasper's talking about how his brother Daenor, who we heard about an episode or two ago, that his dragon has finally taken to wing, so that they'll have another dragon to soon pledge to the High Towers and be on their side and just strengthen their cause. And you can hear commotion outside, and you hear calls of dragon. And then you see Ulf flying around on Silverwing outside of King's Landing, just a big old smile on his face, looking like he's having the time of his life. And I thought this was like what just happened, and maybe it was, but I'm like, he is about to be Vhagar food, because Aemon takes off and mounts Vhagar and starts taking off after Ulf and Silverwing. Both and Silverwing are making good time. They're about back to Dragonstone. And then Aemon's on Vhagar and then tells Vhagar no and orders Vhagar to flee and turn around. And then we get a really badass image of Rhaenyra kind of walking up the hill with Syrax behind her, Vermithor on the hill further behind her, and Silverwing perched on top of Dragonstone. And you just see kind of a resolve and a smile on her face and just a new sense of confidence that she hasn't really had since the beginning of this, because the odds have been kind of against their favor since the beginning. And now she's feeling good. She has all the dragons now that were in their possession have riders, and she is feeling good. And that's going to take us into the final episode of season 2 next week, which I'm pumped for. I think this has still been a very strong season. I think we're still on par with early seasons of Thrones. I've been loving it. I've been having a lot of fun. I thought this was another fantastic episode this week. I thought what it really set up. I thought the scene with, like I said, Oscar Tully and Daemon, that was one of my favorite scenes of the whole season. Also the scene with Jace and Rhaenyra, with him just talking about just that internal struggle that he's going through right now and kind of the position that he feels like it puts him in, and questioning his own legitimacy. I thought that was fantastic. Well written, well directed, acted, all of the above. I'm loving it. I think the 4 clear winners that we had this episode was Oscar Tully, clear number 1. But then we had Hugh, because he came out looking selfless, strong, and now he's got the second largest dragon in the kingdom. And then we thought Alan of Hull, he comes in next winner there, because he got the recognition, kind of an acknowledgement, and the well done from Corlys. He has a dragon that chose him. Like, he didn't have to go out and even audition. Like, Sea Smoke came to him and chose him. And then Ulf. Ulf's got a dragon now. All of his wild claims with the tavern have kind of been substantiated. He's now has a dragon to back it up and prove it. And it was great. So thank you. I didn't get much shorter on this second re-record. We're at 30 minutes, but hopefully you've enjoyed these. We got one more episode to go through. This is, like I said, a bonus episode. We'll still be releasing a normal podcast episode on Wednesday. I'll be doing a little bit of story time. I'll be doing an August streaming and theater preview. I'll be doing a Deadpool and Wolverine mini review. Forgot about that. And so a lot of fun stuff coming this episode. So thank you all for tuning in, watching, listening, like, comment, subscribe, share, follow, all that fun stuff. And ultimately, and most importantly, don't forget to go down once more. Later.